Nick, you're in the dark.
I know. I'm see. Maybe I can just twist it a little bit here. I'm on a very small desk in my daughter's room.
Oh, okay.
Is that a little bit better?
That's a little better.
Okay, we're all set.
All right, so let's crack on and call the meeting to order at 8:59 a.m. Can you ask for a roll call, Tody, please?
Sure. Mike Stevenson,
Present.
Nick McGee.
Here.
And Allison Bristol.
Here.
Thank you.
Yay. Can I also call on a motion to approve or otherwise the minutes of the last meeting?
A motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor, I guess.
Thank you.
Well, I thought we did really well last week, and I'm hoping we can continue in the same vein. Not that I'm looking to skirt over any of the salient and important points, but I think if we can keep the progress going, we might get it done with one, maybe two more meetings.
Can I introduce an idea before we start looking at it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. After the discussion at the full meeting last week, and I was hoping to have a draft to share with you today, but I will post it on the Google Drive. I started to do a spreadsheet to compare compensation by Maine towns by salaries, and also, Maine towns by population for the whole state of Maine, and then another spreadsheet that's just Cumberland County. And I'll do the same thing for the Board of Ed. And I'll just share preliminarily, it's very interesting because the Brunswick so far has had the highest compensation at 4,000. And if we take the about 10 most populous towns around Scarborough, the average comes to about $2,500 a year. But so I thought this would be interesting for the full group to get a sense of, what other towns are doing. And the other thing that I spotted in doing this, and I'll do another spreadsheet for this, is that the vast majority, I think I'm correct in saying this, the vast majorities of towns or cities also have their district. So I thought that would be interesting for the full group to see. So that's just a little report.
That's awesome. And a couple of things I'd like to add to that. When we as a full committee start to discuss salaries, one of the valuable things, Nick, that we got from your request to see the previous charter amendment proposals is that the current salaries, I think, have been in place since 1993. And I just wonder whether we have an option to remove the salaries from the charter and put a procedure in place that means the town doesn't have to vote on the numbers. I mean, we trust so many other people in the town to set salaries for all the officials. Why does the town need to vote on salaries for the councillors and the Board of Education? Allison?
One of the things that I found was, well, first of all, if you look at the charter, the town council compensation, I'm assuming also Board of Ed, can be amended by ordinance. So, and I have found some towns that have done that. So Tody, we haven't done that, have we?
No, we've never. No.
Okay. And the other interesting thing in Wyndham, they changed their charter to go from $35 per meeting to an approved budget allocation as part of the operating budget every year. So that could also be something we might want to discuss.
Yeah, I think these are good discussion points for the larger committee.
Yeah.
Since we voted to retain that topic over the bigger side, but those are really good, and those are good pieces of information. Yeah.
I think my last comment before we get on to what we've been charged with looking at, really to do with wards, districts, is that I've been doing some research too, and the Wyndham town manager, interestingly, is my neighbor. So
Wow.
I don't know. I don't know how he's managed to remain my neighbor in Scarborough whilst the town manager in Wyndham. He was previously for 18 years the town manager in Kennebunk, also whilst living in Scarborough, which does point at one of the observations I made about whether there is any significant importance of having a town manager living in the town, and whether potentially it could even be a conflict of interest if he did. But I've been reaching out to him and a couple of other people about wards and districts, and it seems that the people that are fiscally responsible don't like it because it costs money, and they do believe, like we've read everywhere, that it leads to a division within the town. So I seem to be, picking on people that have got that opinion. But I think there's a lot of opinions out there that are contrary to that. I found an awful lot of documentation like the one that Mike Wood found about Canadian towns and cities. I'm not sure how relevant they are to what happens in the US, but there seems to be lots of them that have done it in Canada. I guess once you've done it, you're sort of stuck with it for a while at least.
If I could, we were talking, Liam and I were talking with the town attorney yesterday on a question that another subcommittee had with regards to the budgets. And we actually asked the question as to whether it would be this review to look at wards or if it would be a commission. The town attorney felt that it is a change in the structure of how the government is run with regards to having wards and precincts. And he felt that he was going to look into it to be certain, but he felt that it would not be at this level for a discussion. It would be more for a commission to review that. And there's a process for a charter commission where it's a substantive change in the form of government and how their elected body is chosen.
I think it would be cool to find that out sooner rather than later, because we could expend an enormous amount of time on that.
Right. And I believe Phil Saucier was going to probably get to Liam by the end of this week or the beginning of next week on that. And Liam would definitely have the answer for the next charter meeting.
Nice. Yeah. Hey, Allison.
So if it were up to a commission, how would you express or not express that in the charter? Just leave it the way it is?
It would currently be left the way it is, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And a commission is a different type of, I don't mean to say animal, but it's a different process than a review, where the charter in itself calls for a 10-year review. A commission is totally different. It has to be elected by the residents, the body of the town, and ask the question, do we want to put this in front of the voters for a charter commission? And I think, if I'm not mistaken, in conjunction with the question, you can also have the election of the commissioners. And there's a group of elected and a group of appointed, and there's just a whole different process for that.
Yeah. And so could that be a separate recommendation by the charter committee, that we leave it the language as is in the charter, but make the recommendation to form a commission to explore districting?
I think in the summary, Nick probably will do the summary from the committee. He could make that part of the summary, and that they were, even if it gets out of, the committee votes in favor or votes not to, I think they could put it as part of the summary presentation to the council. And
I got to believe that at any moment in time, the town council could vote to go through that process with or without us.
Absolutely,
I think it's a standalone subject. So
yes, absolutely.
I don't want to, just on the larger committee level, I don't want to spend an enormous amount of time going over a topic that the council can easily take up. We can say that it was quickly vetted through us and we think there's some momentum one way or another, but I don't want to go beyond that because of the process behind it.
Right. And you could have a group of citizens that want to come forward and do a petition for a commission. And that's another, 25 people, 20% of the registered voters have to sign a petition. They have a certain amount of time to get it to us. So there's a number of different ways it can be addressed.
And I think one of the underlying messages that I got from a lot of locations was there's pros and cons, and I think the same pros and cons appear everywhere. So if you read one of those documents, I think you've read them all because they're all the same. But one of the underlying messages seemed to be is take it to the town. Let the town decide. Don't throttle it at either this level or the town council level. And the town council does do that. They do throttle things back, and clearly they need to sometimes. At the same time, they let things go to the town. You've only got to look at some of the unanimous votes for things to go on the ballot to realize that they're just letting it go to the town because it's a democratic process and it's worthy of it. So this might be one of those too. Anyway.
Cody, I got a quick question.
Sure.
How much does it cost to run an election?
Well,
Just
depends.
in general, just for general information.
Okay, well, depends on the elections. Like a school election will cost me about $5,000 to $6,000, depending on if we print the ballots or the ballots are sent out to a printer. Normally, we end up doing it the second time around, printing in-house, because if it fails, there's only a certain turnaround. This last election was probably about 15. It was very expensive. Yeah.
The
because we
national
had-
election.
Yeah, the national. Yeah. Yeah. And I think there is going to be, you're going to see more absentee voting starting. I mean, we had, over 13,000 people vote by absentee. And I think that's going to be the norm. People are going to start. So our postage is going to go up. Just in postage alone, this last election was over 5,000. So.
And that's going to go up, you know that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So 15 is on the conservative side.
Okay. And if I can digress for one more minute, I wanted to ask Chody, where is the best resource to find town populations? I took the Scarborough population off of the population information that long range, actually Karen Martin is just added to the comp plan.
That's who I would go to, is Karen.
Yeah. So would she have populations of other towns, or?
She probably has access to that. Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
She's a wealth of information with regards to
I know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I did find a resource on town by town, whether or not they'd got wards. And on that particular, and I think it was a Maine state document, it implied that a lot of towns have got wards that don't have wards for at least what we're talking about. It shows Gorham having wards, and they absolutely don't have wards. But they do have a town councillor that wants one. The chairman doesn't, but they do have somebody that does want one. I don't know which one it is, but I know the chairman, and reached out to him to get his opinion.
At the state level, we already have five districts in Scarborough. At the state level, we're broken out into 5 districts.
Oh, that's
the town-wide, we're considered one ward,
Right.
one precinct. And I can remember when I first started, we only had 3, and now we're up to 5. So there's my worry, and I know this is not part of it. We need to move on. Is we already have workers that are they're dealing with 5 ballots in one election. In a primary, you're looking at 15 or 16 ballots, depending on how many the town has, because you have all the Democrat, Republican, and Green Independent, and then you got the referendum, and then you got the local ballot. So that you have to have 2 people, and no matter how cautious you are in having them, there's a process they follow. We have had instances where a ballot was given out that should have been a different, the ward and precinct was different. We've caught it, but that's my fear, is if we break out to wards, that's just another added level for our staff to have to deal with. So just my opinion.
All right. So let's go back to the worksheet that I've been using. And I think, Alison, you had a question about what exactly you were supposed to be doing in connection with the question that you were going to ask. And I looked back at the video of the last meeting which I sent you the details of, but I still wasn't clear on the question you were supposed to be asking. But it was in connection with at a point that the state of emergency is lifted, do we all go back to face-to-face, or is there still an option for councillors or anybody or the other members and attendees to continue remotely?
And I think specifically it was about the definition of council being present, and if present was defined by being in the same room together, or would they have the option to be present electronically? This is after the emergency situation. So I think what we talked about, Tony, I don't mean to put you on the spot.
No, that's okay.
But I think you were going to look into the question. And then Mike, I thought you were going to put it on the subcommittee tracker, and Nick perhaps put it on the master tracker. And so, you know, I'm happy to do whatever I'm supposed to do, but I'm just a little unclear on what that is.
I do know that it's on the council's radar. My understanding is there is, and I'll check with Chris Chiazzo, he's one of our representatives. They're looking at verbiage at the state level to possibly have that option of staying remote, like we call it a hybrid, where some of us are in chambers and others are on Zoom. So at this point, there's really nothing written in legislation or at the local level. So that may be something that I can have Liam and I work on for the group as a whole when we meet the next time. Because I know everybody has that question, and all the other committees have asked that same question as to whether we can stay like we are right now or whether we're going to have to go in person. And I know that's, and Tom may have the answer, and I'm not really sure.
So if we had some language that referenced in accordance with state law, you know, present in accordance with state law, then that would cover whatever the state decides present means, right?
It could, yes.
Yeah, that might be the easiest way to do it.
Have just a general statement. Because everything is still so, I mean, there's certain things that we still are able to do because of the emergency order, that once it's lifted, it's gone. We won't be able to do certain things.
Yeah. Okay. So as I understand it, then there's nothing for us to do until you come back with some, after consultation with Liam and look at verbiage there. Okay. Awesome. I think the next one on the list is one of the missing ones from the list 2 weeks ago. Nick, I think it's yours in connection with vacancies in the last 6 months of the term.
Yeah. So my thought was, I think I went over this briefly last time, but if you had a counselor, and I know Tody, you said that, you know, often you've convinced a counselor to wait until the 6 month period is, you know, we're in that little spot so you can save it to the general election. I just didn't know if it was worthwhile to actually put a time frame on it, saying the council can fill a vacancy in somebody's, or can opt to not fill the vacancy within their third year. If it's their last year of their term, then maybe it's wise to wait until the November elections. That was just a thought. At least give the council the option.
Right. So if we have it doesn't have to be a general election. It can be a next election. Like we did have one, I think Councillor Babine resigned within so many days of the June election. We had a primary and a school budget validation. So we held his election then. So it doesn't have to wait till the general election. It can be at the next election that's scheduled. So,
right.
But I understand where you're going.
Yeah, if he resigns in May, I think you're forced into a situation to hold a special election within 60 days, right? Or at some point within the 60-day time frame. Is that the way?
No. Sorry, I had could you bring me my notebook? Okay, thanks. Sorry, work doesn't stop.
So it's within 60 days. So
yeah.
I mean, it was a thought. I don't, you know, I didn't know if it was worthwhile. I know it doesn't come up much. But whether or not it was wise to say if council was in their last term, then the council can defer to the general election that year.
I'm just wondering whether the frequency of it occurring requires any thought on changing the wording. Are we following any state rules here that you know of, Tody?
For the, I'm sorry, I had someone just walk in on me. Repeat the question.
So in connection with 211,
yes.
So if someone does resign and trigger an election because of the timing of that resignation,
this does flow with Title 30, which is elections for local. They have a timeline as well in Title 30.
Does that mean that we could change it and not follow specifically Title 30 or not?
We can be more stringent. We can't lax. We can be more stringent than what the state rules are.
Right. How do you define stringent?
Well, if you want to say outside of a 5-month period, or like Nick said, defer to the next general election, you could change the wording on that.
Okay.
Because it's actually more strict than it is to follow the 6 months.
Okay. Alison, have you got any thoughts on this? I mean, is it something that you think we should take to the main committee?
I mean, if part of me says if it works, don't fix it, I mean, I don't, it doesn't sound like there's ever been an example where the timing has been a problem. And if anything, there have been counselors who have timed it to help the town.
So Nick, on reflection, as it's your point, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not going to die on this hill. I just wanted to make sure. I mean, I was just thinking, hey, is there a situation where we might find ourselves running a person, in a 2-month period, twice, where you're forced into a special election sometime in September, with November rolling right around the corner and they got to run again, and whether that's a waste of time and money. And so that was the only reason. But if it hasn't happened and we're able to kind of, cross our fingers and hope, somebody doesn't have to take those steps during that time frame. Like I said, I'm not dying on this hill. It was just a thought.
Okay. So let's have a proposal then in terms of, what our thoughts are, yes or no, in terms of killing it off here or taking it forward.
I'll motion to just table it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll second that.
Okay. I'll third it.
So I guess with the first and 2 seconds and a third, well, I guess we've approved that unanimously. Okay. So I think 213, I think the social media comment in connection with 213 is a theme that runs all the way through the town charter. I think in a lot of places it talks about publishing things in the newspaper. And I think the newspaper is the thing of the past. I mean, I don't know who reads the Leader. I mean, I do because I get it that way. But I think if it wasn't stuffed in my mailbox, I don't think I'd bother. So I think it's a little outdated. So I think, my thought is that I think we should push to change where appropriate the wording to include social media and any other outlets for information as they come along.
The council rules has I don't have it in here, I grabbed the wrong book, but they have a subsection on public notices. And I know the planning board is different with their notices than what the town council is, as there's also different requirements in other committees that you have to have it posted 10 days prior or 7 days prior or 14 days prior. I think that might be something, instead of just a thought, we could automatically start doing, like having maybe a public notice page on our website.
Yes.
I mean, I think that's something that we can automatically do and not have to change the charter. And that may be something that it can be adjusted in chapter, the council rules instead of here. But I mean, we can still adjust the days. But that's, it is very expensive to post in the newspaper. Yeah. So just a thought.
Alison?
A good thought. Yeah, I agree with Mike that the public notices are, in a paper are outdated. I mean, even the Press Herald has online, there's a public notice section that you can do a search, but who does that really, And my only concern with what we wind up doing, if it be here or in the council rules, is, again, going back to Karen Martin's great data on the population of Maine that's now in part of the comp plan that's in development. 25%, a little more than 25% of the population is 65 plus. 41% is 55 plus. And you have to think about, of this age group, of which I'm proud to be a member, who looks on social media, so to be reliant on social media, I think also doesn't serve the need that there's, needs to be. And I'm not suggesting mail or anything like that, because I know it's wildly expensive, but how do I hear so many people who say they never hear anything, and the onus is always on people going to the website. And, unless you're particularly interested in a subject or a topic or the town government in general, I think a lot of things happen and people say they don't know about it. So I don't know what the answer is. I'm just throwing that out as a point of information.
So Nick, correct me if I'm wrong. On the planning board level, when there's a hearing, the abutters are notified by mail, correct?
Yes.
And that's the same with some of our licensing ordinances, is that we have to notify a butter within so many feet by mail within a certain, I think it's like within 7 days or 14 days of the hearing. So we do have that requirement as well.
Yeah.
Nick?
Yeah. So my thoughts on this is, I kind of agree that, papers may be a thing of the past, but where you publish in the newspaper, you do get an online presence. I think tying it to a social media platform is a mistake, because these come and go. And you may find yourself posting on a insignificant social media platform, and somebody's going to say, hey, we complied. We posted it over here on this platform. Well, not everyone has Facebook. Not everyone, and with those companies kind of coming and going, and I mean, MySpace was the biggest thing, 15, 20 years ago. And that's, it's nowhere to be found these days, and I just worry trying to tie it into, the social media aspect of it is, it's just too, it just gets too convoluted. I think you leave this, the paper does have an online presence. I think, the leader, it does show up in your mailbox. And I think, you have to want to learn more about your community, and you have to take it upon yourself to dig a little. I think the town does put the information out there, and just because we as people aren't aware of it doesn't mean that they haven't done their duty in posting it, whether it's to the website or sending it to the paper. I mean, I think the onus has to be on the individual at some level to stay informed and keep up on things.
I don't know if you noticed on the website now, on the homepage, there's been an addition to, it's a link and it says agendas and minutes. So somebody clicks on that, it goes to all the committees and you have access to all the agendas, where before, I don't believe we had that. And I think
I can verify that.
okay. So that was brought out last night at the council meeting, and because somebody that was speaking at the meeting indicated that she wasn't aware of where to look on the website, and it was brought up that it's there now. There's a big block that says agendas and minutes. So, and all the hearing notices that we have coming up are part of the agenda. So that's another way, as I indicated, that we could put that out there with regards to notices. But some of them are requirements of state statute too. So we have to take that into consideration as well.
Allison.
I have a question about the leader and the forecaster, which is, you know, I agree with Mike. I read my leader because I get it in the box, and I usually pick up the forecaster when I'm at Hannaford's. Do we have, are the way they are set up, do we have any dedicated, I'm going to say, editorial space from week to week? Because I think they, you know, they generally, or I guess the town, does the town have any dedicated space where if there is I'm going to call it an ad in the leader, if there's just some blurb somewhere close to where Scarborough editorial might be, that is a, you know, continuously running ad, for lack of a better word, that says something about you know, for public notices, you know, go, you know, visit this website or something like that. So, you know, people, or publishing the public notices in the paper themselves.
Well, it states that it has to be in, the notice has to be placed in a daily circulation. The leader and the forecaster are not daily, they're weekly.
Yeah, yeah.
I do know that the communications chair, Councillor Johnson, it's like every other week there's like a column, the Councillor's Corner.
Yeah.
And maybe I can ask him if he can just, when he's making comments, to indicate where people can go to look for agendas and hearing notices.
Or even if there's a little ongoing sidebar that's part of that real estate that just says, you know, for public notices, go to www.
Right.
Kind of thing, because the abutter notices, that doesn't really apply to, you know, if an ordinance is up for discussion. I'll use as an example, you know, the marijuana ordinance, licensing ordinance, that, you know, those conversations went on at the ordinance committee level for almost a year. But once it was passed, there are so many people who have come forward that would say they didn't know anything about it. And it's, you know, to Nick's point, you know, people have to put it upon themselves to pay attention. But I think that if there was some way that there was, you know, a way we could figure out to point people to the information that's online, I think that could be helpful.
Sorry, go ahead, Nick.
I was just going to say, I think what we're struggling with is honestly the death of reporting is really the issue. I mean, that's, isn't it? I mean, people don't know about it because we don't have reporters anymore. They're gone, you know, so that's what we're struggling with. And I think we just attempt to do our best, post something on the website, a dedicated space on the website. People should be able to know too. They're free to walk into town hall or call town hall and get information at any time. So that's my 2 cents.
I just got one thing to add to that, and I was one of the people that raised this as a question, observation. If we go back to the actual charter itself, this is what it says. Prior to the enactment of any ordinance, the town council shall hold at least one public hearing, notice of which shall be given by at least 7 days in advance by publication in a newspaper having a circulation in said town. So it doesn't mention daily circulation. And by posting notice in a public place. That's very old-fashioned. I think the note that I made in the charter itself that triggered my comment that I emailed to Liam at the front end just said, plus other media outlets. So I don't think it was particularly aimed at social media, because I do agree with you, Nick, that, you know, I think Facebook's here for a long time, but there's been lots of other ones that have come and gone. I don't even remember MySpace. So that's how much impact it made on me. But I do think that I think it could be updated a little bit more to include other other media outlets. I also agree that, if you want to be involved in the town and where the town's going and the decisions that the people are making in the town, you do have to go out of your way. And I find the newsletter perfect. It gives me a really good insight to the things that are going on. And when you start to read some of those things, it reminds you then, to go to the website and look at other things that are happening. It's a shame that everybody isn't subscribed to the newsletter, because that would be a perfect mechanism to get that information out.
There's also a link at the top of the website that it's residents, where you sign up for the newsletter. You can also sign up to receive the agendas for certain committees. And I noticed the other day when I was doing setting up the one for the council, it had increased significantly. So people are aware that that is there, and that might be another thing that we can get the councilors, Councilor Johnson, to mention in an article that is there. And I think there's like 10 committees that people can receive notices on if they sign up for it.
Yes, Alison.
Very good point about the newsletter. And, maybe there's since that's a monthly, maybe there's, an ongoing section that is about public notices. And then to Tony's good point, if there is with getting those alerts, which is so great, because now I don't feel like I'm stalking the town all the time by checking, but because you just get it in your inbox and it's great. But maybe there's also a public, I don't know how many public notices go out. I don't think there's a lot of them, but maybe about public hearings. If there is a public hearing, that there could be, alert on an upcoming public hearing. So, and if it's, we know far enough in advance when those are going to be, that people will receive it if they're signed up, and, they can't say they didn't know.
So the newsletter goes out twice a month, I believe. The first.
Oh, twice a month? That's even better. Yeah, that's great. But if there are, public hearing alerts that are part of getting the agendas, if there's another section that's a public hearing alert, that could be helpful too.
I will email, I think her name is Carrie. I don't see her that often, about maybe putting a blurb in the next newsletter about the sign up for agendas. I can ask her to put that in there as well. Yeah.
I don't know whether you saw Paul Johnson's video on Facebook that he made with some slides. It was a 5-minute video. I saw it yesterday, where he mentioned marijuana and odor control, the charter, and one other long range, I think, planning committees that were in operation. I thought that was pretty cool. I don't think it's necessarily relevant to this, but I think it's an indication that another area of the town council is doing these little video things that gets pushed out in that direction, giving an overview of some of the things that are happening in the town. I just think that we should, modernize the terminology in this particular section and any other section like it. I like Nick's phrase, "not going to die on the hill." So I sort of feel similarly about this one, but I think it's an easy enough change to make, and I don't think it's particularly contentious that we just update it a little bit with, some verbiage to reflect other media outlets. I have a proposal that we take that forward and approve it for consideration. I guess I'm looking for a seconder if anybody feels appropriate.
I'm sorry, what do you propose? I'm sorry, I should have raised.
Yeah, what's the language?
Well, I think the proposal is that we take this particular section and update the verbiage to reflect a more modern approach to that communication, other than just a newspaper and a notice in a public place. So I think it would be some verbiage along the lines of media outlets rather than specifically social media.
Could I make a suggestion?
Sure.
This might be a different topic. but I did see a note on it in this tracker, the 7 days advance notice. Somebody made a suggestion for 14 days. So in my mind, if I had to rewrite this section, I would actually agree, a 14-day advance notice for an ordinance change seems reasonable. Publication, I think you leave language, publication in a newspaper, but then add something saying, to also be included in the website and the town newsletter. And that way, at least a resident can go in and subscribe to the newsletters, and they would always have that notice coming in.
Yep. Allison?
With the timing, with the 14 days in advance, I can't remember the context, but I know I've been to ordinance about notification and also suggested 14 days for some specific ordinance that was under consideration. And they didn't go for the 14 days, and I tried for 10 business days, and that didn't fly either. So I think where they landed, and maybe we want to be consistent with what the thinking is on council, was 10 days. Now for the 14 days, the post office is already saying, given how they've been slammed, with their services have been slammed, that first class mail is now going to take, I think, our priority mail 3 to 5 days, so they're slowing down their process. And there was also language, not here because it's saying notice shall be given 7 days in advance. Of course, if we're doing it all on, I'm just thinking out loud, forgive me, if we're doing it all online, then, or on papers, we certainly can meet a timeline. But if there's anything that has to do with the mail, then, that's going to be subject to how long it takes the post office to deliver something. So there's some ordinances that say it's going to be mailed 10 days in advance. And if you mail it on a Friday and there's a holiday weekend, you know what I'm saying? It's like it leaves a very narrow window for things to be delivered.
So you've got to remember that this 7 days applies to the town council.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going off on a tangent. So.
Okay.
If I could, Mike, my thought on this is, we're talking about an ordinance that the town council wants to change, alter, add, or something. My question would be, they have a section in here about what happens if it's an emergency. So I guess my comment would be, why not 14 days? And if it really was an emergency, you have a mechanism in place for that. And I only say that because, I own my own business, and my weeks get booked, and if there was an ordinance that caught my attention, I'd want to know more than a week advance, because I could tell you my next week's schedule is, there's no room for anyone else right now. So 14 days out, at least I got a shot at putting it on my calendar and having it hold. That's the way I live. And I don't know, maybe I'm a unique person in that aspect, but I doubt it.
I think there's 4 of us here probably that work exactly like that.
Not me, I'm retired. But I agree with you, Nick. I think 14 days is, I'm all for that. So
let me rephrase my proposal then. So my proposal is that we incorporate a proposed change from 7 days to 14, and that we add some words to reflect other outlets, the website, the newsletter, and that will be something that we'll take forward to the main committee.
I'll second that.
Okay. So we should do a vote. I vote in favor. Allison?
yes.
Nick?
Yes.
Okay. So would you like me to draft some words and I'll circulate amongst the 4 of us? Allison?
I have a question about process on that, because I seem to recall Tom Hall asking us not to draft language. So Tody, maybe you can give us some advice on that. Do we want to just provide bullet points and then somebody else
I'm going to defer to
Draft
Nick.
it? Oh, okay.
With all due respect to Mr. Hall, I've requested that all the subcommittees propose actual language for the full committee to
Oh,
decide
okay.
upon.
Okay.
I,
Okay.
I do have a working document that I've been putting recommendations from the subcommittees in, so this would go into that document. That way, when it goes to the full committee for review, they'll know what was changed. So, is that okay, Nick? I
Yes.
kind of took that upon myself because I knew it was going to end up having to be presented
Yes.
anyway, so thank you.
I mean, I think some of the changes that we might ultimately end up proposing are technically more complex and, legally, potentially exposing us legally. I don't think this is one of them. I think we should be quite capable of drafting something pretty close to what I'd expect to see on the ballot. But I'll draft something and send it to the four of us, and feel free to kick it around. And Nick, if you want to be the ultimate arbiter of what goes forward, that's fine too.
Yeah, I think we'll produce, at the end of our subcommittee hearings, I think we'll have a red line version of the section that we've altered with some language in there, and that will be sufficient for our discussion purposes on a bigger level. Once we get something through on a bigger level, I do believe that Tom is correct where there probably will be a worthwhile exercise of sitting down with in one of the town attorneys just to go over what the changes are before a final document is reviewed by the committee and produced to the town council. So I think there's an opportunity for that, but I think we got to do some of the heavy lifting here before we get to that point.
Right.
Attorneys aren't cheap.
Okay. I see also there was a third comment about 213, one from you, Alison, as well, in connection with detailed suggestion on the process of introducing a new ordinance. Is that something that's not currently covered? It doesn't look like that's covered at all in 213. It's just more to do with the notification of.
Yeah,
the
no,
enactment.
I think we've covered, I think we're all saying the same thing, and I think we've covered.
Okay.
Going back and looking at it and noticing that Falmouth has got 14 days in advance, so.
Okay. All right, moving on to the next one then, 213.1. This is from Mike Wood. An emergency ordinance, an emergency ordinance and questions over consistent terminology. I don't really know what he means. Do you want me to read it? I don't know whether you've got copies of it in front of you. The town council may, by a vote of 5 of its members, pass emergency ordinances to take effect at the time indicated therein. Such ordinance shall contain a section in which the emergency is set forth and defined, but the declaration of such emergency by the town council shall be conclusive. No public hearing or notice, therefore, shall be required prior to the passage of an emergency ordinance. Every emergency ordinance shall automatically stand repealed as of the 91st day following the date on which it was adopted. However, this shall not prevent one reenactment of the ordinance in the manner specified in this section if the emergency ordinance still exists. An emergency ordinance may also be repealed by adoption of a repealing ordinance in the same manner specified in the section for adoption of emergency ordinance. I'm still not clear what he means. Can you? Yes, Alison.
I'm just going to say, I think that emergency language is very clear. And I mean, we're in it now, right, Jody? We're in an emergency now. So
if you remember back in when I think they did an emergency ordinance for outside sales for the restaurants to help them. And then they revisited it and extended it for the winter months. And they gave it, I think, a deadline of March, something like that. Right. So that did not require a public hearing because an emergency ordinance in itself. So it was to help the restaurants. I mean, that's the most recent one we've done.
So I don't know whether there's any other references to ordinances, not necessarily just emergency ones, that Mike seems to think there's an inconsistency between them.
The council rules has a section on emergency ordinances, and I apologize because I grabbed the wrong book, and but it also addresses it in that. I'm trying to remember what it says. I can't think right off.
I mean, I guess I would hope that any of the committee members that feel really strongly about something that they've put forward would join the subcommittee discussion and contribute, or at least add in writing something to further support the discussions that we might have. And I did canvass Mike for an explanation on something else that I didn't understand, but that's all I've got from him is what's here in front of me. I mean, Nick, do you see any of the wording needing any changes?
No.
I mean, I think it seems fairly, I mean, I think you have to sit there and go, okay, we do it here, we have to review it there, and we can extend it one time. And so I think it does jump around because it's a moving process. But other than that, it seems straightforward.
You know, he's talking about terminology. I mean, I don't know without specifically knowing exactly what terminology, and I'm trying to find that document that Liam at first provided us with the highlighted section and the comments from Mike. Searching for that currently, just to see if I can pull out.
I think in my big pile of papers, I've got a copy of it here somewhere. Yeah. Okay.
You know, I don't. You know, if he highlighted what terminology he had concerns with, it'd be a little easier for us to digest. But
it's probably all over the page. No, actually, interestingly, what's in the tracking document is not what was in Liam's document. So in Liam's document, it said supermajority ? But I don't know what supermajority is, because it's not a term that's in the paragraph above. But defining a town council glossary, which I guess he's called TCG, consistency with months versus days lacking, duration ?
I mean,
So
I guess
don't know.
my thoughts are, you know, do we see anything
Pardon?
here that we feel needs to be changed in that
Two.
section?
I would say not.
Yeah.
I agree, not.
I'll motion to table.
Allison, you want to second it?
I'll second.
So I vote in favor of tabling. Nick?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
All right, I'll keep this this marked up copy open because we got another one now from Mike Wood. We're about 8 minutes out, so this might be the last one we talk about. Section 214. Toady, the town clerk. His question in the tracker says, "Town clerk, can the duties be assigned?"
So what,
Again, when we look at the marked up copy, it just says "are assigned to others."
which my duties are explained in the administrative code. So I don't know if we want to make a reference to duties in the, I think it's 301, the administrative code. And that's what you'll find. I know one of the other committees, they had that same question with regards to the administrative code, because it doesn't reference it says that the town manager shall develop administrative code approved by the council, but it doesn't say what the chapter or the ordinance number it is. So they're asking to make reference to that administrative code for a change in the charter. So this might be an area where you'd want to put that in there as well.
Alison?
Yes, in the second sentence, if we just added something that said the town clerk shall act as clerk of the town council in accordance with the town's administrative code, something like that.
I mean, I think references are a consistent theme throughout the whole charter. You know, I think I've raised a number of them. Mike Wood has definitely done. That it talks about, you know, Maine state statutes, blah, 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 but doesn't state which ones they are. So you can't find them to cross-reference to see if they're being adhered to. Interestingly, some of the Maine towns still run by Massachusetts state codes. Because I started looking in a few of them, and the numbers did not match anything in Maine, but I found them in Massachusetts. So I guess they must have adopted something when Maine was part of Massachusetts, although that seems way too long ago.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I think the other thing to keep in mind is, you know, they'll repeal and adopt, and you know, those will change. I always hesitate to reference you know, a specific statute just for fear that it will go away and they might replace it with something. So I think the general reference to in accordance with state law is probably more appropriate in a document like this.
That's been a question from other committees too, other subcommittees, and Tom is going to have the town attorney draft something up to explain why. And Nick, I think you're correct in that it changes all the time.
So I think that the thought here is that we take forward to the main committee a proposal that adds the town admin code 301 or whatever the number is. Mm-hmm. So can I have a proposal to that effect?
Whatever Allison had said, was it in accordance with
the town's administrative code?
Yeah.
With town's administrative code.
Do we need to include the number? I mean,
I'll go ahead and do it. That's not a problem.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Do we? Well, I guess that would be the question. Do we actually even want the number in case that never changes?
Right.
I think if you just left it general in accordance with the town administrative code, I think you've covered your bases.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Do I vote in favor? Allison?
Yes.
Nick?
Yes.
So unanimous. Yes, Allison.
I think we also need to include a sentence that says the town clerk should get whatever she wants.
I think she probably does. I think 215.1 is a real quick one. It's another one from Mike. What constitutes a fiscal year?
I believe
215.1 says prior to the end of each fiscal year.
Yeah, again, fiscal years can change. I don't see why they would want to, but they can.
Because our fiscal year is July to June, and the state's is October to September, correct?
Right.
I believe, yeah.
I mean, I feel like fiscal year is defined as a defined term.
Do we need to say the town's fiscal year? Is there any concern that would be, you know, versus the state's fiscal year? I don't think so. I think it's clear.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to table this.
I'll second that. So let's record a vote. I'm in favor of tabling.
Yes.
Nick? Allison?
Yes.
You know, I think as a side comment on that, that would be really painful to add the word "the town" and take that through the town council and then put it on the ballot. You know, not to say if it's not significant we shouldn't do it, but
Right.
I think that's the right decision.
Yeah, I just threw it out as a question.
So I guess now would be a good time to ask if we've got any public comment. Anybody online?
No, there's no one. You don't want to finish the last one of 200?
Sure. All right. Yeah. Why
So then
not?
we move right in. Sorry, Nick.
So BOE audit remedies is what we've got in the tracker. What is written in the Liam's document says what remedies ? These found in the audit ? Reference to where one can find audit subject matter, when, scope, etc. The actual 215.2 says not later than the first regular town council meeting in February, the town manager and superintendent of schools through the Board of Education shall present an audit action plan with remedies as appropriate to the town council for review and approval. And then there's bizarrely a list of amendments to this particular section, which we haven't seen really anywhere else. But
Once the audit is done, there are recommendations from the group
Right.
itself on things that they should look to do to change, to remedy what they've found. And it's, I mean, I don't think they've had too many of late. Do you, Nick?
Yeah. No, and I think that's it, which is the audit actually prescribes a path forward. So I don't know how you define what the path forward is in a charter document when we don't know what the audit results are. I think it's pretty
Right.
clear the audit plan puts forth, or the audit recommendations puts forth the time frame and the changes that are needed. But that's what you pay the auditors to help you do.
so I concur. I don't see how you can expand on that.
You can't. I'll motion to table.
Second,
I vote yes to table. Alison?
yes.
Nick?
Yes.
Well, thank you for making us do that, Tody. I appreciate that.
Just cleans that one up.
It does. It does. Of course, you can now go and say we've only got 2 left to the bottom of the page. Wouldn't it be nice to clean those up?
I've got a little time.
So one observation I would make is that I've used this revised version of the tracker, and following the last meeting that we had, Tody, you wanted a date of discussion column, which I added.
Which is nice.
My version also combines the article and section into one, but I noticed that the one that Liam used for the last main meeting was an older version, didn't have the date of discussion comment, and didn't have the merged article and section number. Just a throwaway observation. I think it would be nice if we were all using the same.
Sure. I'll mention it to him.
Okay. Is he going to tidy up the in his spreadsheet the ones that he'd allocated to subcommittees that were not really allocated to subcommittees?
That's on me. I've got to sit down with Liam and go over what we're going to allocate where.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I think there was a lot that had been allocated that were main committee things, not necessarily new ones.
I think you did that with a couple last meeting, didn't you, Nick?
Yeah.
Subcommittee 3 was.
I can schedule some time to sit with Liam and clean everything up, because we got to allocate where we need to allocate, and then just kind of go over how we're going to document the changes that come in as well to the tracker and for the larger committee as a whole. Okay.
I think I managed to grab all the ones from Hamel Hanley. They're all in the end. I don't know whether you noticed, but I also created a change notes worksheet in the workbook, and it's just something, we're in the software business as well, but one of the things that I'm sort of keen on is, when you see a version, it's nice to know what's being changed rather than having to figure it out by comparing 2 documents. So I like that, but not everybody might want to go that way. So next meeting, and I think the agenda just continues to roll on. But I've got the next meeting as being 2 weeks today. Is everybody still good for that?
I think that's the one I might have a conflict with, but I think it's going to be okay.
And I was just going to throw out there, do you want to do it next week instead in the morning?
So what date did we have it scheduled for? What is 2 weeks
Fourth.
today?
I believe it's the 4th,
Okay.
March 4th.
Yes, March 4th. March 4th. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I know.
I'm looking for my calendar. Here we go.
That would make it the 25th if we did it a week today. That will be 2 charter Zooms in the same day. And the way that's sitting right now, I don't actually know whether I can make. I got something that should be happening over this weekend business-wise that might get pushed back to the back end of next week instead. So I would know later today. But is March 4th a problem for you, Nick?
No.
When do you think you'll know, Allison?
I'm going to call it and say I'm fine.
Okay.
Yep.
Shall we just leave it in place then for that?
Yes.
That's March 4th at 9 a.m. I will propose an adjournment then at 10:05.
May I ask one more question on the spreadsheet that I'm working on with the compensations and so forth? Would you like me to email it to you both before it gets posted? Just to look at before it gets posted, on the Google site. That's what my plan was, to put it up on the Google account.
I think you're fine to just, make sure we're aware of it and then post it as information. I think Mike Wood's been doing that, which is if there's information for us to consume, put it out there.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good with that. All right. Adjourned at 10:06.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.